Get ready for a deep dive
Yeah.
into a story that's it's truly epic and incredibly impactful. We're talking about the conversion of Omar ibn al-Khattab to Islam. Our source for this fascinating journey is a lecture by Dr. Omar Suleiman from the Yaqeen Institute. And trust me, this isn't your average history lesson. We're about to uncover some surprising details and get to know a figure who underwent, like a complete 180-degree transformation.
What makes Omar's story so compelling is that his conversion wasn't just like a personal event. It had a seismic impact on the entire Muslim community and really changed the course of history.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. Who was Omar before he embraced Islam?
Imagine a figure who's physically imposing, incredibly strong, a champion wrestler, and a gifted poet. That's Omar. But he wasn't just muscle and brawn, he was also intelligent, literate, and served as an ambassador for the Quraysh tribe.
So he breaks the stereotype of the simple brute.
Right.
He was a complex figure.
Exactly. And his initial resistance to Islam wasn't driven by ego or arrogance like some other figures that time. He was genuinely worried about maintaining unity within his society and saw Islam as a threat to that unity.
But here's the thing. He wasn't completely unfamiliar with Islam. His cousin Zayd faced persecution for converting, and his own sister, and possibly even his wife, had embraced Islam before him.
That's right. He had witnessed firsthand the impact of this new faith. Yet he held on to his traditional beliefs, but there were signs, encounters that seemed to have shaken his convictions.
Like what? Give us the details.
One incident that stands out is when Omar witnessed a sacrifice being made to idols. As the ritual was taking place, he heard a mysterious voice condemning the act.
A mysterious voice. Talk about a sign. Do we know what the voice said?
Unfortunately, the sources don't give us the exact words, but the impact on Omar was significant. It planted a seed of doubt, suggesting that there might be something more, something beyond the traditional beliefs he had always held.
So this voice sets him on a different path.
Not immediately. There's another encounter that's almost cinematic in its unfolding. Omar is out one night, looking for his usual drinking companions, but he can't find them. He ends up at the Kaaba. And as he's standing there, he overhears the Prophet Muhammad reciting the Quran.
This is where it gets interesting, right? He's confronted with the message of Islam in its purest form.
Exactly. And the sources tell us that Omar is struck by the beauty of the Quranic verses, even though he initially tries to dismiss them as poetry or sorcery.
That's fascinating. It's like he's recognizing something powerful, something true, but he's also resisting it.
There's this internal struggle happening within him, and what's even more intriguing is that the Quran seems to address his doubts directly. It's as if the verses he's hearing are responding to his inner thoughts, refuting his attempts to rationalize what he's experiencing.
So he's wrestling with these powerful ideas, these challenging concepts. But what ultimately leads to his conversion, was there a single defining moment? Or was it a series of events that built up over time?
It was a culmination of factors. But there's one particular sequence of events that's incredibly dramatic and pivotal to Omar's transformation. It begins with Abu Yal, a prominent figure in the Quraysh, and a staunch opponent of Islam calling for the Prophet's assassination.
And this is where Omar steps in, right? He was fiercely loyal to his tribe and vehemently opposed to Islam.
Exactly. Omar, still deeply against the message of Islam, volunteers to carry out the assassination.
Wow, so he was actually on his way to kill the Prophet. That's intense.
It is. But as he's heading out on this mission, he encounters a young man named Nuaym, who is secretly a Muslim. Nuaym tries to reason with Omar, appealing to his sense of justice, and warning him about the consequences of his actions.
But I'm guessing Omar isn't swayed by this plea.
You're right. Omar, blinded by his conviction, threatens Nuaym and continues on his path. Nuaym, desperate to deter him, throws out one last shocking revelation. Omar's own sister and brother-in-law have converted to Islam.
Whoa, that's a game changer. Family ties run deep, even in the face of such intense conflict.
Absolutely. And this news stops Omar dead in his tracks. He immediately turns and rushes to his sister Fatima's house, consumed by a mix of fury and disbelief.
You can just imagine the tension building as he approaches the house. What happens when he gets there?
The scene that unfolds is incredibly powerful. Omar bursts into the house, demanding to know what they've been hiding from him. His brother-in-law, Saeed, bravely defends their newfound faith. Even as Omar flies into a rage, Fatima tries to intervene. But Omar, in his anger, strikes her, causing her to bleed.
That's a heartbreaking image. His own sister injured by his hand.
It is. But amidst the chaos, something shifts within Omar. Seeing his sister's bloodied face triggers a wave of shame and remorse. He calms down, sits on the couch, and asks to see the Quran. That had been so carefully hidden from him.
So he's finally ready to confront the message that he's been resisting for so long.
Yes, but Fatima hesitates. She reminds him that only those who are pure can touch the holy book.
Does he storm out, outraged by this requirement?
No. Instead, he gets up, purifies himself, and then returns to the couch ready to read.
So there he is, purified and ready to finally engage with the Quran. What happens next?
He begins to read Surah Taha. The surah emphasizes that the Quran is a source of guidance and a reminder from God, not something meant to cause distress. It talks about the Creator who knows everything, both hidden and revealed.
Imagine encountering those words for the first time.
Yeah.
Especially in that emotional state, after everything that had just happened.
It's a powerful moment as Omar reads. A profound realization dawns on him. He sees the truth and beauty in the Quran's message. He understands why he and the Quraysh have been so resistant to it. He recognizes their fear and desperation to cling to old ways, even when presented with something so profound.
So does he have a sudden dramatic conversion experience right then and there?
Well, at that very moment, something happens. That solidifies his transformation. Kebab, who had been hiding in the house during the entire ordeal, comes out of hiding and reveals something astonishing. He tells Omar that the Prophet Muhammad had actually been praying for his conversion. The Prophet had said that he hoped Islam would be strengthened by either Omar or Abu Jahl, whoever was more beloved to God.
Wow, that's incredible. Talk about divine intervention. Omar must have been stunned.
You can imagine the impact this revelation had on him. He realized the depth of the Prophet's compassion, even for someone who had been actively persecuting him and his followers. Omar, overcome with emotion, asks to be taken to the Prophet immediately.
The story just keeps getting more and more intense. I can only imagine the reaction of the Muslims. When Omar, the man who had threatened their lives, shows up at their secret meeting place, they must have been terrified.
They were gathered at Darul Arqam, a house in Mecca, where they held their meetings in secret. When Omar arrives, sword still in hand, panic breaks out. One of the Muslims sees Omar and shouts a warning to the others. But Hamza, who had recently converted and was known for his strength and courage, reacts with remarkable calm. He tells them to open the door. He says if Omar comes in peace, they will welcome him. But if he intends to harm them, Hamza will deal with him personally.
Talk about a bold move. Hamza's faith and confidence are truly inspiring.
It really shows the transformation that was happening within the Muslim community. They were no longer cowering in fear, but were ready to face their opponents head-on, even someone as formidable as Omar.
So the door opens. What happens next? Does Omar charge in sword swinging?
Not at all. The Prophet Muhammad, upon seeing Omar, steps forward and embraces him. He pulls Omar close and shakes his garment. In a firm yet compassionate tone, the Prophet asks Omar why he has come and urges him to turn away from his hostility before disaster befalls him.
This is such a powerful moment. Two figures who were once sworn enemies are now standing face to face, one offering guidance, the other seeking truth.
And in that moment, Omar breaks down. He declares his faith in Islam. I have come to you, he says, to believe in Allah and to believe in the messenger and what he has brought from Allah.
I'm getting chills just hearing that. It's such a dramatic turning point.
The Prophet, overjoyed, embraces Omar again, this time with even greater fervor. The other Muslims erupt in shouts of Allahu Akbar. Their fear is replaced by joy and gratitude. The news of Omar's conversion spreads like wildfire through Mecca, reaching even the heavens, whereas the Quran tells us the angels rejoice.
It's amazing how one man's conversion could have such a profound impact.
And it wasn't just a symbolic victory. Omar's conversion had immediate and far-reaching consequences.
So Omar's conversion wasn't just a personal change. It actually had like a tangible effect on the Muslim community.
Absolutely. His strength, his influence within the Quraysh, his very presence emboldened the Muslims. They were no longer a small persecuted group. They became a force to be reckoned with.
How did that shift manifest? Did things change right away for the Muslims in Mecca?
Almost immediately. Omar challenged the Muslims to stop hiding their faith. He led them in a procession through Mecca, openly praying and proclaiming their belief in Allah. It was a radical change, a very public declaration that Islam was there to stay.
That must have been a pretty shocking sight for the Quraysh leadership.
It certainly was a challenge to their authority, but Omar was fearless. He even went directly to his uncle Abu Jahl and told him face to face that he had embraced Islam. Then he sought out the biggest opponent of the Prophet, a man named Utbah, and after hours of fighting off challengers, pinned Utbah to the ground and threatened to gouge out his eyes if he and his men didn't back down.
Wow, that's quite a power move. He went from being a persecutor to a protector.
And it wasn't just physical strength he brought to the table. Omar also used his intellect and influence to protect the Muslims. He advocated for them, spoke out against injustice, and made sure they could practice their faith openly.
He really did a complete 180. Taking those qualities he used to persecute Muslims and turning them into tools for their empowerment.
It's a remarkable transformation. And those who witnessed the early struggles of the Muslim community recognized just how significant Omar's conversion was. Abdullah ibn Masud, a prominent companion of the Prophet, said that Omar's conversion was a victory in itself, a conquest for Islam. He said that before. The Muslims couldn't even pray openly, but after Omar's conversion, they prayed publicly, with Omar standing guard, ready to defend them.
It's like he became this shield for the vulnerable, a champion for justice.
Exactly. And this strength and boldness were evident, even during the Hijrah, the migration of the Muslims from Mecca to Medina, while others left secretly fearing for their lives. Omar performed tawaf around the Kaaba openly and challenged anyone to stop him as he left for Medina.
It's like he was daring them to a fight.
He was making a statement. Islam was no longer a hidden whisper. It was a powerful force. And he was at the forefront leading the way. His conversion marked a turning point. For the Muslim community, and for Omar himself, he went from being a fierce persecutor to a fearless protector, a champion of justice, and a key figure in the establishment of the early Muslim state.
It's truly a mind-blowing transformation. This man went from wanting to kill the Prophet to becoming one of his closest companions, his advisor, and a leader who helped shape the course of Islamic history.
And what's so inspiring about Omar's story is that he didn't abandon his strong personality traits. When he embraced Islam, he channeled them, refined them, and used them for good. His strength became a shield for the weak, his determination became a driving force for justice, and his sharp intellect became a source of wise counsel.
He's a powerful example of turning what might be perceived as negative traits into something positive. It's a reminder that we all have the potential to change, to grow, and to use our unique strengths to make a difference in the world.
Absolutely. His journey also highlights the importance of seeking knowledge, questioning our assumptions, and being open to change, even when it challenges everything we thought we knew. Omar's story reminds us that truth has a way of penetrating even the hardest hearts, and that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from confronting our own biases and embracing a new understanding.
So what does this all mean for us listening? I think Omar ibn al-Khattab's story leaves us with a pretty profound question. How can we, like him, channel our own strengths and passions towards making a positive difference in the world? We may not all lead armies or establish empires, but we can all strive to be a force for good in our own communities, in our own ways.
That's a powerful takeaway. And perhaps like Omar, we can find that our own journeys of transformation begin with a simple act of listening, of opening our hearts and minds to a new perspective, and allowing ourselves to be changed by the power of